The story begins at this beautiful lake. Then this man was calling someone and asked what he was doing. This man was the story's protagonist, and he was Liang Qu. Suddenly, this man glanced at him, and he was smiling. Then he was calling Silly Chu a silly boy, and he asked him what he was staring at. Upon seeing him, Liang Qu was shocked to find out that it was just his father. Then his father scratched his head and told him that he didn't even recognize his father. However, his father told him to come and help him pull in the net, and they'll see how today's catch turned out. Then he added and told him that he'd show him some real skill later. Liang Qu was just speechless after he heard what his father said, and he was just stunned at that moment. However, he followed his father. Meanwhile, they were riding on a boat, and his father was so glad while Liang Qu was shocked after seeing a lot of fish. Suddenly, his foot was bitten by a little crab, and Liang Qu was startled at that moment. At this point, his father was eating the fish he cooked, and they were both happy. Then Liang Qu drew something on the wood. Meanwhile, during the sunset, Liang Qu and his father were resting at that moment. Suddenly, Liang Qu was startled upon seeing a beautiful fish. According to him, it's a red carp. All of a sudden, he jumped off into the water, and his father was just shocked. At this point, Liang Qu was under the water, and he was looking at the red carp fish that he saw a while ago. But he couldn't see it, and at the back of his mind, the fish disappeared. While he swam the lake, Liang Qu was confused about why there were no fish left in the water, and as he stated, it was so strange. At the same time, he was curious why couldn't he move after entering the water. At this point, Liang Qu felt pain, and he gritted his teeth. According to him, he can't move at all. At that moment, he was just calling his father. Meanwhile, during the night, Liang Qu was alive, and he was stunned while he was still calling his father. Suddenly, Liang Qu was shocked when he saw someone in his front and told him that he was awake. However, the old man was Ban Xingzhang, and at that moment he just smirked. Then he asked Liang Qu if he missed his father. Liang Qu was looking at the rope in his hand, and he was confused. Then he asked them what are they all doing. But Ban Xing smiled, and he told Lord Zhang that he was as sharp as ever. Tricking that kid into leading them, there was all part of the plan to use him as bait for the water monster. Meanwhile, they were in the middle of the lake. Ban Xing smirked, and he told Liang Qu that while they were standing guard for him, he sure slept soundly. Liang Qu was startled and said that it was just a dream again. According to him, it's already been a month since he came to this world. The original owner of this body died from illness, and he replaced him. The original owner lost his mother at birth and grew up with only his father by his side. Until 3 months ago, when his father passed away from a cold, the emotions he held in his heart were feelings. He had never experienced it before. In the past month, he still hasn't fully grasped the original owner's social connections. As a result, he is deceived by Zhang, and he becomes bait for capturing a spirit beast. In this month since he arrived, he discovered this world possesses extraordinary powers. Humans can achieve incredible feats through cultivation. Those who enter this realm are called martial artists. Moreover, in this world, not only humans can evolve through cultivation. Other animals can also be cultivated, and such creatures are generally referred to. All of a sudden, Lord Zhang shouted and said that it was here. Then Ban Xing was shocked and said that the water monster. Upon hearing that, Liang Qu glanced at them. At this point, the water monster surrounded their boat. Then Lord Zhang and Ban Xing looked afraid at that moment. Lord Zhang was frightened, and he was confused. Didn't they say the water monster was only half a man's height? All of a sudden, the monster hit the water, and they were shocked. Then Liang Qu said that this thing was way too big. He immediately stood up, and he told them that it was coming this way. Then suddenly, Lord Zhang clenched his fist and said that the moment had finally arrived. He'd waited all these years for this moment. Lord Zhang was mad, and according to him, this punch contains 10 years of power. Then he asked the monster if he had taken it. At this point, the water monster opened his wide mouth in front of Lord Zhang. All of a sudden, the sea monster attacked their boat. Then these two were luckily still at the edge of their boat. This old man was frightened and said that he couldn't die there. Suddenly, he glanced at Liang Qu behind him, and according to Liang Qu, this is bad. Instantaneously, Ban Xing stabbed his hand. Then Liang Qu fell into the water. However, Liang Qu was trying his best to get off the rope in his hand. At this point, he tried to bite the rope in his hand. But he couldn't make it, and there was something heading to him. Liang Qu was just stunned at that moment. And according to him, He can't do it. Abruptly, he saw his father telling him to wake up. Then Liang Qu immediately opened his eyes. At the back of his mind, if only this were real, it was so wonderful that would be. Nonetheless, he was imagining that he extending his hand to his father. But suddenly he grabbed a wood. Then he held it tightly. Fortunately, Liang Qu got out of the water at that moment. But he was suddenly shocked when he saw his father's boat. Suddenly, someone pulled him under the water. Then Liang Qu was shocked at that moment. At this point, there was a huge monster beside him. The monster drags him to the bottom of the lake. Then in this lake, there were skulls and skeletons. Then Liang Qu gritted his teeth, and in his mind, he was saying sorry to his father. According to him, he tried his best, and he really did. Liang Qu was really sorry for his father. All of a sudden, he was suddenly dropped by the water monster. Then the monster was near to him and was about to eat him. Suddenly, his vision darkened at that moment. Then the water monster opened his big mouth and was ready to eat Liang Qu. At this point, Liang Qu was fainted. Then suddenly, there was a table above him. Instantaneously, a system popped up and it stated that Zai Ding was activating. Detecting accessible Zai Ling, beep, acquisition successful, awakening ability possible. Water control. At this point, there were flames on the table. Then a system was notified and it stated that the obtainable spirit was a water monkey. Acquisition in progress, acquisition complete, refinement successful. Body repair in progress. Suddenly, Liang Qu opened his eyes. Then he was confused about whether he was dead. According to him, he was dead in the water. Then Liang Qu was annoyed at that moment. However, he was confused about why it felt like walking on land in the water as the resistance had disappeared. All of a sudden, there was a system that appeared in his front, and it stated that ability, water flow control, was successfully acquired. Consume stamina to control water flow. After seeing that, Liang Qu was confused about what was and controlling the water even though he was breathing. Liang Qu was startled after knowing that he could breathe underwater. Nonetheless, he was looking at his hand and he was amazed that the injury in his body had healed. Instantaneously, the face of a monster appeared behind him. All of a sudden, the monster opened his big mouth and Liang Qu was shocked at that moment. Then suddenly, he screamed and he looked afraid. But he was startled and confused when he saw the water monster surrounded by flames. Then he was curious if he created it. Suddenly there was a system in his front, and Liang Qu was curious if could it be the system in the novel. Then he was amazed after knowing that in the water, he have no limitations and he can even control it. At this point, he was looking at the water monster. Then he saw that it was moving, and he was startled. According to him, the control has a time limit. Suddenly, the water monster was about to eat him. Fortunately, Liang Qu was fast, and he managed to move immediately. He was looking at the monster, and at the back of his mind, he couldn't keep this up. Then he was confused about is there was a way to subdue. All of a sudden, Liang Qu was shocked. Then a system appeared, and it stated that ability domination blood symbol acquisition was successful. Effects. Through the host's blood, ancient runes can be engraved to form a contract with water beasts. After reading that, Liang Qu smiled and at the back of his mind, this is it. Meanwhile, he was on the top of the water monster. Then the monster's tail was moving at that moment, and he was so eager to eat Liang Qu. All of a sudden, Liang Qu controls the water flow, and at the back of his mind, he needs to control it. At this point, the monster opened his big mouth. Then Liang Qu was shocked while looking at it. Suddenly, his hand has a power, and he immediately attacked the water monster. Then, Liang Qu used all of his force. He gritted his teeth, and the vein in his eye turned red. Liang Qu was confused as to whether that was a test of spiritual strength. At this point, his eyes became different. All of a sudden, there was a scale that appeared in his face, and Liang Qu was worried if he was going to fail at that moment. Then suddenly, he remembered his past. And Liang Qu said that he wanted to live. Instantaneously, there was another power in his hand. Then Liang Qu attacked his enemy and said a mere beast. Obey me. Meanwhile, during the night, Liang Qu was in the land at that moment. He sighed and said that he survived. But in the lake, there was a water monster who was looking at him. However, Liang Qu sat down and said that of course, in the end, he subdued this big guy. Then apart from that, there was a system that appeared and it stated that the spirit master was Liang Qu. The refined spirit was water monkey white fusion 5%. Water essence was none and water beast domination was Taihua E. Consume 80 water essence to evolve. The evaluation was water money spirit originates from the great Huai whirlpool lord, capable of awakening underpowered, weak little characters. Liang Qu told his refined spirit water monkey that they stay there for now. If there's anything, he'd call him. After hearing that the water monkey turned back and left. According to Liang Qu, after subduing it, a spiritual link was formed between both of them, so he can contact it any time, or it can contact him. Nonetheless, Liang Qu stood up and said that he should head home, find some food, and rest. Fortunately, he has the terrain information in his fused memories. It's not too far from his home. This water monkey was just strolling in the lake, until he found a beautiful place. Meanwhile, in this village, there was a group of men that came. Then the man on the right was Ban Xing, and he showed the way to the man in front. While they were heading their way, the man on the left asked the guy beside him who are those people, and if they were heading to Shui's house. But the other guy was confused if that Mad Zhong and Zhao Mansion people had Shui gotten into some trouble. Upon hearing that, this man was Li Libo, and at that moment he was shocked. Then he looked so worried and said that Shui was in trouble. Nonetheless, these men were outside Shui's house. Ban Xing smirked, and at the back of his mind, once Liang Qu died, his wealth would be up for grabs. This will just about make up for the failure of this mission. Then he was mad, and as he stated, it's all because that Zhang guy was too weak. All of a sudden, Ban Xing kicked the door. Then he smiled and told Zhang to please go inside. Ban Xing glanced at the other side, and suddenly he was shocked at that moment. Then he saw Liang Qu and Ban Xing pointed at him. He was asking Liang Qu why he was still alive. At that moment, Liang Qu, also known as Shui, was startled, and he asked him what are they all doing. Ban Xing looked so surprised, and he asked Liang Qu that he was not dead. Then Lord Zhang was mad and asked Ban Xing what he meant by dead, and why is he always so careless with everything he did. But Ban Xing smiled and told Lord Zhang that was the Liang Qu. Then Lord Zhang Xiang asked if he was the Liang Qu, and he was still not dead, a true survivor. Ban Xing grinned and said that truly a nuisance that lives forever. All of a sudden, Zhang Xiang commanded them to take him down. Then instantaneously, they grabbed Liang Qu at that moment. Liang Qu was shocked, and he asked them what are they going to do. But suddenly, Ban Xing punched him and told him to stop talking nonsense. Then Ban Xing told him that Lord Zhao asked the martial artist, Lord Zhang, to come and deal with the water monster to benefit the villagers. And he was colluded with the water monster and killed Lord Zhang. He made them lose a huge amount of money and put the villagers in danger. Upon hearing that, Liang Qu was mad and told him that it was them who set the trap and kidnapped him, using him as bait to catch the water monster. But Ban Xing was enraged, and he told Liang Qu that he killed Lord Zhang and still dared to come back. He called Liang Qu a monster and asked him how arrogant he was. According to Liang Qu, in his previous life, he was indeed called a monster because he was a loner. At that moment, they bullied him, and someone told him that orphans like him always like to steal things. Every time he passed by, people made fun of him. At that moment, Liang Qu was just stunned and speechless. Then the man in front of him told him, showing that monstrous look again. If he has guts, fight him. All of a sudden, Liang Qu punched in the face. Then reason he was called a monster was because he was ruthless. Though exposing his abilities might be risky, surrendering was not his style. Instantaneously, he lunged at Ban Xing using his head. Then they got off their hands to Liang Qu, and he was heading to the water in the small basin. Unfortunately, the basin dropped and the water spilled onto the floor. Then Liang Qu sat down, and at the back of his mind, even if he really became the monster, he called him. He will still bite off a piece of their flesh. All of a sudden, the water spirit was in his hand. Then Ban Xing told him that he still dared to make a move. And he told Lord Zhang that they'd just tie him up and bring him to their Zhao residence. They're short on people to raise that thing, and that orphaned kid seems perfect for it. Suddenly, Lord Zhang told Liang Qu that if he agreed to become Lord Zhao's adopted son and take care of this matter, they'd let him go. Otherwise, they'll break his legs today. At that moment, some villagers were looking at them. Then the man said that back to adopting sons again. He'd heard that many people from the neighboring county who went to Zhao's residence had disappeared. Nonetheless, the lady on the left said that recently, Zhao's residence has taken in a lot of people so strange. All of a sudden, they were all shocked upon hearing someone coming, and saying that they'd see who dared to bully little Ashue there. Then at that moment, the village head came and told them that he's the old village head, and he's still alive. But Lord Zhang told him that he old fool. Suddenly, the village head was mad and asked him what he wanted. Then he told him that he was an official of the great Shun dynasty. He asked him again what he wanted, and if he intended to attack a public servant. Lord Zhang just said aye at that moment, and he just gritted his teeth. Then the village head was still mad and asked him what he meant by aye. The village head expected him that he was Lord Zhao, and he told him that would have to show him some respect. If he keeps talking, he might just lie down. You old fool, Lord Zhang stated. He looked at the head village angrily, and he told him that he won't argue with him today. When he goes back to report to Lord Zhao, this matter is far from over. Then instantaneously they leave. At that moment, Ban Xing spit, and he told Liang Qu that he was just as ungrateful as his father. However, they left and the village head entered the house. Then he went to Liang Qu and called him Ashue. He told him that some things are better avoided. Nonetheless, Liang Qu thanked him and called him Grandpa. He also told the village head that he would remember. Nonetheless, they left and the village head told the villagers to stop looking and go on. At this point, Liang Qu was just alone and according to him, this kind of thing might happen many more times in the future. Village head Grandpa was able to save him once, but he can't save him. All of a sudden, Liang Qu clenched his fist and said that he needed to become more proactive and that the system was his chance. Suddenly, a system appeared and it stated that the water essence found per evolution progress was plus 0.1. Upon seeing that, Liang Qu was shocked and confused about it. Meanwhile, Liang Qu came back to the lake. At this point, he closed his eyes and according to him, after subduing the great Taihua crocodile, he can summon it at any time through their spiritual link. Suddenly, there was a light emerged in the water. Then Liang Qu was just looking at it. All of a sudden, the water rises. And suddenly the water crocodile appeared. But Liang Qu was shocked after seeing a little crocodile, and he was confused about where his giant crocodile was. Abruptly, a status window appeared, and it stated that subdued aquatic beasts can change their body size at will to manage energy consumption. Evolution +1. Miniature form, small crocodiles, energy consumption was extremely low. At that moment, Liang Qu smirked and he was so amazed. As he stated, it has that feature and no doubt this system was amazing. Then Liang Qu asked the crocodile where did he find that water essence, and he told the crocodile to show him the way. In an instant, they both jumped into the water and sank at the bottom of the lake. Meanwhile, they arrived at this water essence. Then Liang Qu immediately looked at it and said that it looked like they'd arrived at an underwater cave. He was shocked at that moment. Then he saw a lot of golden plants and Liang Qu said that was incredible. He was confused if that was the legendary spirit plants. All of a sudden, Liang Qu touched it. Then a system appeared and it stated that a spirit plant with water essence had been detected. The host can choose to absorb it. However, this world contains spiritual materials and treasures that have absorbed extraordinary energies. These plants, which have special effects, are known as spirit plants. They say there's a frozen pond in the Zhao Manor's backyard, and at the bottom, some special vines grow. Master Zhao uses them to lure cultivators and turn them into his flowers. At this point, Liang Qu grabbed the spirit plants and said that he wanted to see how much water essence he could get from these spirit plants. But he asked the little crocodile if couldn't he help him out of a bit. But the crocodile refused to help him, and Liang Qu told him that he was so lazy, and not to move, he'd do it himself. Meanwhile, Liang Qu already gets the spirit plants. Then he grabbed one of them and said finally. Instantaneously, Liang Qu bit it, and a system popped up stating that water essence was detected. It can be used to improve the fusion of the aquatic spirit and the evolution of aquatic beasts. After biting the spirit plant, Liang Qu smiled and said that it was delicious. Nonetheless, he bite more and the system notified multiple times that the water essence was +1. At this point, Liang Qu was already full. Then suddenly, a system appeared and the message was for him. It stated that aquatic spirit refinement water monkey personal, fusion was 5%. Water essence 25 aquatic beast. Dominion, the Taihua crocodile requires 800 points of water essence to evolve. There was no evaluation. Upon reading, Liang Qu said that fusion of the aquatic spirit and evolution of aquatic beasts. It's better to improve himself first. Then Liang Qu immediately chose to increase. Abruptly, there was a huge monster behind him, and Liang Qu said that he could feel his body rapidly getting stronger. With that power, he could definitely take on those guys from the other day, and if he will add water flow control. Nonetheless, the system appeared, and it stated that aquatic spirit refinement, water monkey white fusion 7.5%, and no water essence. Aquatic beast dominion was Taihua crocodile, requires 800 points of water essence to evolve, and still there's nothing in the evaluation. According to Liang Qu, now his weight is around 45 kilos. But for now, he'd need to gather more energy over a few days, and he can't absorb any more today. At the moment, the most important thing is solving the future financial issue. Autumn is coming to an end, and during this season the crocodiles have slower blood flow because of hibernation. He can't rely on them right now. All of a sudden, there was a fish appeared in his front. Then he was startled upon seeing it. Instantaneously, he grabbed the crocodile, and Liang Qu was laughing. Then he said that it looked like he could rely on this. At the back of his mind, I can solve this temporary money problem by selling it at the market. Meanwhile, the next day, according to Liang Qu, he sold a large yellow fish for 80 coins, and it's a small profit, but it can help. The merchants of this world aren't like the market vendors in his previous life, and they're pretty easy to convince. At this point, Liang Qu looked furiously at the back of his mind. After dealing with the water essence issue, the next step was to find the right moment to settle things with that crazy Zhang. All of a sudden, Ban Xing called him, and Liang Qu was startled at that moment. Then he told Liang Qu that there was a little misunderstanding between them a few days ago. He was actually looking for him to apologize, and it was a coincidence running into him there. However, he told Liang Qu that his boat was just nearby. Then he asked him how about if they have a meal together and clear up that misunderstanding. Ban Xing laughed, and he told Liang Qu to just relax, and it'll just be the two of them. And at the back of his mind, just the two of them, and he'd see where he thought he could run. At that moment, Liang Qu just smiled at him. Then he told him that sure, just the two of them. That actually makes him feel safer. Meanwhile, at the Zhao residence, Lord Zhang told Ban Xing that something went wrong with the experiments in the manor recently, and a lot of people died. The manor is in urgent need of elixirs materials. Liang Qu is an orphan with no family, making him the perfect choice. Then Lord Zhang asked Ban Xing if he understood. Ban Xing repeatedly told him that he understood, and that brat Liang Qu wouldn't escape, no matter what. Tomorrow, he'd tie him up himself. Then Lord Zhang told him that if he did that well, Master Zhao would even ask those great figures to help him ascend to immortality. Upon hearing that, Ban Xing was shocked, and he asked Lord Zhang if that was for real. Of course it's real, Lord Zhang stated. Then Ban Xing was glad, and said that he was going to become immortal. And he was also finally going to ascend. All of a sudden, Ban Xing screamed at that moment, and said that he was going to succeed. The next day, at the lake, Ban Xing and Liang Qu were on the boat. Then Ban Xing was cooking at that moment, and he told Liang Qu to look at that beautiful, quiet place, not a single boat in sight. Liang Qu immediately followed him, and he was looking around. Suddenly, while he was cooking, he dropped something on the food, and he told Liang Qu that they'd have a good meal and settle their little misunderstanding, just the two of them. But Liang Qu asked him if he was sure that there were no other boats around. Then Ban Xing laughed and told him that of course. He scouted the area carefully. According to Ban Xing, as long as he drinks that fish soup, he can scream all he wants but no one's coming to save him. Suddenly, Liang Qu stood up and he looked evilly at Ban Xing and told him good. Then Ban Xing was just smiling at that moment, and there was a water spirit that was heading to him. Unfortunately, the water spirit was on his face, and he was screaming. At this point, he couldn't breathe. Then he saw Liang Qu at that moment. Meanwhile, in the middle of the night, Ban Xing was speechless, and he was shocked upon seeing himself tied to a rope. Then Liang Qu told him that he was sleeping quite soundly. Upon seeing him, Ban Xing was shocked, and he asked him what he was trying to do. Then Liang Qu told him that it looked like he made quite a profit selling him out to the Zhao family, and that must be at least 2 taels. At this point, Ban Xing was begging him to listen to him and told him that he could explain. But Liang Qu told him to take a good look around, and he asked him if that place seemed familiar to him. Then Ban Xing was confused and asked if isn't that was the place where they hunted the water beast that night. All of a sudden, the water monster appeared behind Liang Qu, and he was just laughing at that moment. After seeing that, Ban Xing was shocked. Then Liang Qu told him that it was a water monster, yes, but now it's his pet. And he asked Ban Xing why didn't he say he was a monster. Monster, you really a monster, Ban Xing stated. Suddenly, Ban Xing told him not to eat him, and that he could tell him everything. Then Liang Qu asked him why does Steward Zheng want him in the Zhao manor so badly, and why has he been hiring so many servants lately. Ban Xing told him that those people they're all materials for Master Zhao's ascension to immortality. He needed to refine the immortal elixir to ascend. Those people were all taken to be used for elixir refining. Then Liang Qu told him that it looked like he'd captured a lot of innocent people. According to Ban Xing, he was forced and he didn't have a choice. At the back of his mind, Liang Qu was a worthless scum. Wait until he brings Master Zhao's followers out, and he'll turn them into his elixir materials. He'd make him wish he were dead. All of a sudden, Liang Qu was holding a stone and Ban Xing was shocked at that moment. Then he asked him what he was doing. Unfortunately, Liang Qu hit him with that stone and his blood splattered. But you've seen it all. I've shown you the monster side of me, Liang Qu stated. At this point, he dropped Ban Xing into the water, and according to Liang Qu, bringing him into the manor was for elixir refining. If he doesn't kill him, it'll be him who dies. Looks like he needs to find a powerful backing to buy himself some time to grow stronger. Ban Xing was sinking into the bottom of the ocean, and suddenly, something happens to the marks on his stomach. That's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you wish to have another manhwa recap like this, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel so you will be updated for more content like this. Until next time.